to do this every time. So, oh, wait, we forgot to say that. Well, we're about to say that now. Welcome. And Kelsey has agreed to record the show. So if you don't want to be seen, you should take your picture down. I think that Chrissy's already recording the show, but that's what she said. We could put it up on the website afterwards. So welcome everybody, and we're really pleased that Kelsey came back because she was at the Larson Gallery in May. She gave a great presentation, but unfortunately the technology failed us and we didn't get to see her slideshow. So she said she'd come back and she's going to continue to encourage us to use native plants in our gardens. And so her topic today is Heritage Gardens 101, what to expect when gardening with native plants. So thanks everybody who came. We appreciate it. And I'm Mary Lou Rozdilsky from our board, the Yakima and Sealand Neighbors Network board. And this is, you all know Chrissy, who is co-hosting. And our vision, our group's vision is to build and sustain a community where neighbors in that Yakima and Sealand engage with and support each other through the transitions of aging. And we really appreciate all of our sponsors and our members and our volunteers that make that possible, and our business sponsors as well. So, Chrissy, we're recording, right? And Kelsey's going to take questions at the end after she does her slideshow, but jot down any questions you have. And so I'm just going to say a few more words about Kelsey. You probably read some of this on the website, or you might remember it from the Larson Gallery, but she's from West Richland and she's the Yakima Heritage Garden Program Coordinator. And she's really out and about. I'm impressed with her approach to community involvement. She really is involved in our community. She's also involved with the Columbia Basin Chapter of the Washington Native Plant Society, and she works for a native plant nursery where she grows native species. And she loves to connect with local people in our area with the local shrub-steppe, flora. And she does site visits in homeowners' gardens that are interested in converting their yards to native plants. So she's an avid gardener. She loves making compost. So welcome, Kelsey. We're really glad you're with us. Take it away.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the introduction. Let me just get to the old screen share here. All right, can everyone see my screen? Excellent. Okay, cool. Well, as you said, my name is Kelsey Kelmel. I am the current Heritage Garden Program Coordinator for Benton, Franklin, and Yakima counties. Also on this call today is the new Yakima Heritage Garden Coordinator, who will be starting officially in December, Emily Hamnett. So I'll have her introduce herself at the end here. But yeah, so let's get started. Gardening with Natives 101. What are we expecting here? So first things first, what is the Heritage Garden Program? So a heritage garden is a landscaped area designed to honor the cultural and natural heritage of the Columbia River Basin while utilizing sustainable gardening practices. So for that, what that means for us is we promote the use of native plants, especially those of cultural significance. We promote low water use landscaping and efficient irrigation methods, and we educate our community about the natural history and biodiversity of our region. So that leads me to, what is a native plant? So native plants are indigenous plant species that have evolved to occur naturally in a particular region, ecosystem, or habitat. So what is our ecosystem or region? We've mentioned it a lot on this call, so I assume that you already know what our ecoregion is here. But just in case you don't, we are part of the shrub-steppe ecosystem. So what does that mean? It means we, on average, get less than 10 inches of precipitation annually, and we're dominated by deep-rooted shrubs, hence the shrub, and bunch grasses, hence the steppe. So steppe is actually a Russian word for large arid swaths of cold bunch grass desert. So that's where the origins of the words come from. And it is estimated that over 80% of historic shrub steppe lands have been degraded or lost due to disturbances such as development and agriculture. So when we lose these ecosystems, we lose the biodiversity and resilience that lies within these ecosystems. So native plants are important in our yards and gardens then. Why? Because they're, one, adapted to our climate, they're food sources for pollinators and peoples, and they're genetically diverse, meaning they're adaptable to any changes that are thrown our way. And native plants need no soil amendments or fertilizers, very little maintenance once they are established. And for our region, a really crucial thing is less water, upwards of 65% less than conventional landscaping. So let's think about what is the conventional landscaping right now. The lawn, right? So the average American spends approximately 150 hours per year maintaining their lawns. That's almost a week of your life. Another thing, what is the true cost of the lawn? Money, money, money. So Americans spend $76 billion on their yards and lawns in 2018, according to the EPA. Also our health. So it's estimated that each year over 80 million pounds of herbicides and pesticides are used on American lawns, many of which have detrimental effects not only on human health, but pollinator health as well. And that's more herbicides than farmers use on their crops in the US. And then again, another big one for our area is water. So on average, 30% of potable water is used for watering lawns and gardens. So that's the national average, right? So in an area like ours, where we get less than 10 inches of precipitation, and we're watering a lawn, which requires at least 30 inches of precipitation, it's most likely more water that we are using on our yards and gardens. And in fact, so Nob Hill Water Association there in Yakima, they metered their water usage on an acre of turf, and they found they used over 1 million gallons of water in just one summer. So that's a lot. And especially, does it make sense to continue down that route when we're experiencing extended periods of drought, longer periods of extreme heat, increased demand on our watershed, increased wildfires, and losses of biodiversity? So does it make sense for us to continue the convention of the lawn when there are other alternatives that we could go for? And really, our yards and our public spaces can be more resilient to all of these extremes if we just reintroduce some native plants to our landscaping. So where do we even start, though? That's the thing. Start small and have a plan. So that is what I at the Heritage Garden and Emily at the Heritage Garden program do. We help people come up with plans for their spaces. It's estimated that even just a 4 by 10 foot heritage garden is estimated to save 8,000 gallons of water per year compared to a conventional lawn. And then, so I've created a little plan for you that we'll revisit later in the presentation. But you can have this little 4 by 10 foot area and make a huge impact on your water usage and help support biodiversity. So let's say you already have your plan. We're pretending that you already know what you're doing, where you're doing it. Then what's next? First, you prep your site. So you want to ensure that your planting area is free of weeds and vegetation before you start. You want your plants to have a fresh new start in their new home without competition from other plants. Then, really important, you want to plant in fall if you can. Why? So fall and winter is when a lot of our hyperlocal species go dormant. So they stop expelling energy above ground with new growth, and they really focus on building a strong root system. And during this time period, they're also less likely to be stressed out by transplanting. Also, most of our precipitation, most of that 10 inches, falls during the winter and fall months, meaning the water is more readily available, helping your plant acclimate to their new home. Because you really want your plants to establish themselves well where you're putting them before they have to do any above ground growth. So really fall, ideal time to get plants in the ground. Another thing, source local. So remember, we only get about 10 inches of precipitation in our area, right? So if we're sourcing plants and seeds from a different area that gets more or less than us, is it really going to be adapted to what's going on in our region? Not really, right? So what we want to try to do is source plants as locally close to us as we possibly can, because local plants and seeds are already adapted to what is going on in our ecoregion and as far as climate patterns and precipitation. So where do you even start though? Again, that's where we as the Heritage Garden Program can help you out. We have a list on our website of all of the native plant vendors in Eastern Washington. So you can see there's a little bit of them over here too. But we want to help you get the tools you need to make these choices, right? Another thing that's really important when gardening with native plants, water wisely. So we highly recommend switching to drip irrigation. So all plants that we plant where we want them to go are going to need some help to get established, right? So even if it's a no water once established plant, like the fact that we are still putting it where we want it to go, we want to help that plant really acclimate to their new home. So we want to water them for at least the first couple seasons after they're established, and to get them established. And why are we opting for drip irrigation? Well, if you think about it, if you're just spraying indiscriminately, like all of your yard with water, a lot of other plants are going to take advantage of that free water. So by switching to drip, you're diverting the water where you want it to go, which helps the plant you want to grow flourish, and the weeds will hopefully peter out. So it's a method to help with weed control as well. So another thing when planting natives, I know we are all very into instant gratification. That is the culture in which we live. But for native plants, there is a saying: first they sleep, then they creep, then they leap. So really, a lot of our native plants are not going to start really showing off in the garden until year 3. So you just want to be sure, like, get in that mindset. There are some plants that might be a little instant gratification, but overall, your space is really going to fill in after the 3rd season of planting. And then, so this is an example of a heritage garden before first they sleep, then they creep, then they leap in Yakima. So you can see year 3, it's really popping in the garden there. And after you follow that plan and plant all the native plants that we recommend, you can certify your heritage garden and you get a free little sign to show off what you're doing in your community. You can also see more transformations like this if you go to our Heritage Garden website, and you can scroll through and you can get an idea of some of the garden plants that both I have designed, other people have designed, or even homeowners have designed. So this person, they had just the plant list and they took it and they ran with it. They created their own heritage garden, which is really cool. It's fun to see how creative people can get with native plants. Okay, so let's pretend that you're all on board and you have your site prepped, you followed all the other steps. So what do we do on the day of planting? Or right before planting. So firstly, you're going to want to water your plants really deeply about a day before planting, because you want the plants to be really prepared for the horror of transplanting that you are about to put them through, right? So you really want them to be sated. You want them to have drunk all the water they're going to drink. And then it'll also be easier to get the plants out of the pots if you water them the day before, rather than deal with like a sopping wet plant. And then you're going to dig your hole. How deep are you going to dig your hole? You're going to dig your hole 1 to 2 inches deeper than the pot. Why? This loosens up the soil where the roots are going to be, and it makes it easier for the roots to kind of get out of their shell and establish themselves. Then you're going to fill the hole with water and allow it to drain before planting. Why? Again, so that the roots have a little bit of moisture that they're going down to, right? Then you're going to remove the plant from the pot. Be careful. A lot of those roots, remember that picture of the roots in our shrub-steppe from the earlier slide? They go deep. So you want to keep those strong roots intact. And then you're going to backfill with soil you dug out, and you want to make sure that the base of the plant is level with the ground. So you don't want it to be too indented in, and you don't want it to be higher than the soil. You want it level with the soil. Then you're going to water your new planting really well. Transplanting is very stressful. you want to help the plant acclimate to its new home. And then after planting, you want to make sure you're watering adequately. So again, you're wanting these plants to get established. So if you've planted in fall, excellent. Hopefully the rains and snows will help you out a little bit. But if you're noticing that we're not getting any rain, and if you do like the finger test where you test the base of the plant and it's dry, go ahead and water your plant about once a week. Just check on him, make sure that he's getting enough to drink and it's not stressing out. But you also don't want to water when it's freezing, because nobody likes just an ice bath all over them. So just think like a plant. What would the plant want, you know? We also have on our website this handy drip irrigation guide. So once you know the plant and you know the water requirements of the plant, you can kind of set up your drip irrigation with the correct emitter size, so that you're watering enough but not over watering. Okay, so we're back to the have a plan. So this is a little heritage garden plan that I created for that 4x10 space. So I want you all to visualize a 4x10 patch of your yard that is needing a little extra help. I'm sure a lot of us have some pretty gross looking lawns with the amount of heat and water that we're dealing with here. So if you think about it, if you have even just a little 4x10 foot stretch that you could put a little heritage garden, this is a little heritage garden guide for you. And it basically goes over everything we've just talked about. So the prep your space, plant in fall, water smart, wait and watch, and then certify your garden. And you also get to know the plants. So I will give this this information to Mary Lou and Chrissy to post on the website. So you basically have like a little heritage garden. We've done like a mini site visit right now. Just think about a spot that has full sun and 4x10 foot little area, and these little plants could be yours. We also have, again, on our website, a list of the native plant nurseries near us. So check that out. You can learn where to buy these plants, because sometimes that is also can be very difficult, because a lot of these plants aren't going to be available if you go to like Lowe's or Home Depot. They do, again, really need to be from local native plant vendors. Okay, so that takes us to, this is a known native plant sale that is happening near us, upcoming this weekend and next weekend at Taptail Native Plants in Tri-Cities. But we're going to go ahead and click on the website here. I think this should take us to, yay! So if you go to our website, the Heritage Garden hgcd.info, Heritage Garden website, under resources, there's DIY tools and technical resources. So if you scroll down here, you can find like a huge plant list if you want. You can find planning your landscape, native plant resources. Here is that list of native plant vendors. So our website, like, we want to give you the tools to be able to do this on your own. Because it's just a matter of shifting your mindset, because a lawn is easy to get. It's easily accessible, right? We want to try to give you the tools to make it accessible to do native and drought tolerant plants in your yards. Let's see. I think I've reached the end of my presentation. So again, what I do is part of my job, and what Emily, are you on the call? Come pop up, say hello.
Hello.
Hello. So this is Emily Hamnett. She will be taking over the reins of Yakima and be the Yakima Heritage Garden Program Coordinator starting in December. So what we'll do is you can set up a site visit with us, and we can further go into all of these resources and create a plant list for your space and help you figure out what plant goes where for your own place. So we are a resource for you. Connect with us, and you can find our information on how to set up a site visit on our website there at hgcd.info. Yay!
Great, thank you. Wow.
Yeah.
Do you want to stop sharing your screen and we can come up?
Sure. Yes, maybe. Oh. Stop share. All right, perfect.
So no, it's Emily, right? No, I got the wrong.
Yes, Emily.
Emily, what's your last name?
Hammett.
Okay, great.
Hamant.
Good to know. Thank you. That was really helpful. And I bet you there are questions. I know I have some, but who else has questions for Kelsey or Emily? Well, let me ask one. You talked about how much water we use. It makes a difference whether you're using irrigation water or city water, right?
Well, I mean, the same amount of water is used, right? Like, I think you're probably charged. Yeah, I think like there's metered versus unmetered water, I'm guessing. It really depends on the property, right?
Well, the properties in Yakima have irrigation rights on their deeds. And they pay for that whether they use it or not. They don't pay by the use, they just pay, period. Use it or not. So, in some ways that's a non-motivator, but obviously it's better to use less water than more water.
Yeah, well, if you think about it too, like there's a lot of development happening in this area, right? So it's like if all of the new houses that are going in are putting in lawns, that's just going to it's not going to be helpful for everyone, right? Like eventually something is going to tip, and so it's better to be like prepared, in my opinion, too. But also like it's not just about the water savings necessarily. It's like having a yard and a space that's actually giving back. Because I also think like, I mean, if you're using your lawn, like great, that's awesome. But I highly doubt that most of us are actually using like our full acre's worth of lawn or whatever that we have there, So it's just trying to be more mindful in how we use our spaces and the resources that we put into it. Right.
Now, the other question I have is the example you gave us, after you clear the land and plant the plants, do you always use gravel, or what are the choices? Is gravel the major one, or are there other choices?
Yeah, so it really depends on like you as a gardener and your personal preferences. The mulch is more for like us like aesthetically, right? But like a lot of our hyperlocal species, if you go out and you walk in Cowiche Canyon, like is there bark mulch everywhere? Like is there rock mulch everywhere? No, right? Like there's there's a lot of different kind of ground covers in the form of like lichens and mosses and the occasional rock and all of these bunch grasses. So for us, like gravel or a wood mulch can look cleaner or kind of mimic that, because those things take ages to form out in the shrub steppe, right? Which is why it's also important to try to maintain what is existing out there, and conserve that, because that took a long time to form that bio crust. So really it's personal preference of the gardener then too. And you can think too, if it's in a space that we're maintaining, it's probably gonna, like, no matter how much we say we're not gonna water, we're probably gonna pamper our plants a little more than what would be out in the shrub steppe. So even just thinking of like overcrowding a little bit or creating kind of a denser plant cover can be helpful too, because then the plants like respire and they're kind of working together to keep that water in and cover the soil.
Great, that's helpful. Who else has questions?
I think Judith might.
Judy, you're muted.
Yeah.
Do you put down black fabric?
Okay, so that's again like a personal choice. It can be a good short-term solution for weeds, but I have found in my own spaces that you have to rip out the fabric anyway and just have to relay it, because weeds are always going to find a way, unless you're putting down like a 4-inch plus layer of rock mulch. I've found that weed barrier isn't effective in the long term, but if that's like it depends on your goals in the space too, right? Like, and if you're planning that into your maintenance or thoughts. But that's like my personal, what I have found personally in my garden spaces, but yeah.
So if it doesn't work, then what's the consequence? That it just means you have to weed?
Well, yeah, I mean, like no matter what,
they're gonna have to
weeds are always going to be a thing. Like there's no magical solution to like get rid of all of the weed seeds that are going to meander into your space, right? But thinking like if you're creating a space that really like allows weeds to come in, like say you have that weed barrier down and then just like a really shallow layer of rock, that's like the perfect little incubator for weed seeds, right? Like they all tend to love those little nooks and crannies where the water accrues and they can germinate. But if you have like a dense ground cover or planting or mulch, which can help with the weeds, like initially, then that's an option too. But there really is no like cure all, you're never going to have weeds. Like that's an unfeasible goal for any space.
It's like trying to get the bad grasses out of the shrub steppe. I mean,
Yeah. If there's an in, they're going to take that in. That's why they are so successful, right? Because they've found the right method to spread themselves really well. So a lot of it too can just be like knowing what weeds are in your space, right? Like, are you dealing with bindweed? Are you dealing with, there's another one that's really big over there. They're like, I can't remember right now, but there's those like yellow irises. It really depends on what you're dealing with in your space and how you should approach the management of that too, right? And that's why I like the Noxious Weed Board is an excellent resource. If you're really dealing with some like gnarly, perennial, like noxious weeds, it's good to know what you're up against. And so this is a great way too. Like a lot of us don't really know what's going on in our spaces unless we look, right? And with a lawn, you don't really have to look. Like it's just up, I mow it and it's done. But this is a way, like gardening with native plants or just gardening in general, like you're way more engaged in your space than a lawn typically is.
that's helpful. Other questions? Janet, do you have any? I think we lost her. Maybe she has her mute on. Chrissy, have you made any changes? Not yet?
Not yet. So
But so Kelsey, say a minute more. There's going to be, there are some sales coming up for native plant sales. Are they listed on the website or we just have to go to the?
So you have to go to the individual vendor. That's just one that I know of. I know Derby Canyon had, I think last weekend, the 14th was their last in-person sale date for this season, but you can always reach out directly to those nurseries too and just see, because like they'll have plant sales, but if you won't know if they ask if there's like more available. Yeah. So, and that's a great way to like just support local businesses too. So trying to source locally, it's just creating a web.
Great. Great.
What's the name of that group that's in the same greenhouses as the master gardeners? It's called something like North Yakima Conservation.
The Conservation District, yeah. So they have, typically they do offer a spring and a fall sale, I believe. The fall is usually, I think, shrubbier options. And then the spring is usually they're like wildflowers and forbs. But yeah. And then we are exploring, hopefully in the future, the possibility of somehow helping facilitate, as the Heritage Garden program, helping facilitate a plant sale. Because again, that can be the hardest part.
Yeah.
Because there is no native plant nursery directly in Yakima as it stands right now. Unless you want to make one. Like you guys, if you start a local little nursery there.
We have some of us have a friend who lives right on the edge of the shrub steppe, and he grows he lets all of his sage grow, and he'll give you sage plants.
I love it. Yeah, that's great. Well, and that's another thing, like I love the idea of what if our gardens were actually like seed banks for restoration or like projects locally, or just sharing with friends. Like what if our gardens were the way to, I don't know, you don't have to buy everything at a nursery. Maybe you just make friends with people who have complementary plants growing in their yards.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because seeds are always going to germinate, right? Like plants are not stagnant. There is always new life emerging all over the place. So.
Oh, great. Can you grow bunch? Are bunch grasses one of the options for heritage gardens?
Oh my gosh, bunch grasses are like the backbone of the shrub steppe. So of course, and they add that structure and texture and interest year round. It like we get caught up in the wildflowers, but we need more than just that. We need the backbone there, right? So bunch grasses are awesome. And there are definitely bunch grasses that you can source. And that should be, I include like 4 grasses in everyone's plant list. That's like my go-to. Number 1 is the grasses. So yes.
And currants are another possibility, right? Aren't
Yeah,
they?
so in Cowiche Canyon, there's wax currant and golden currant, I
Yellow.
believe, is there too, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
my.
and those are lovely. They need a little more water. Like you usually see them like when you're walking down a ravine, you know, there's like in a little rocky nook where a little bit more water accrues. That's where you usually see like the wax currant, or that's what I've noticed. So yeah, like hiking out in these spaces too can be a really great kind of inspiration for your gardens, because you can kind of see like there's a lot of diversity out in the shrub steppe, and it's a lot thriving in the 10 inches of water that we get or less. And it's not every spot that's out there gets that 10 inches of water. So it's like just learning to kind of read the landscape and what does that tell you about the plant and how can you incorporate that into your space can be a really cool adventure too. And then you start seeing like what's in your heritage garden, you see it out blooming in the shrub steppe and you're like, I know this plant. So you're really also just like tying yourself even more to the space that we're in, right? And like appreciating where we're at and all of the plants that grow here.
So I have a new goal for the fall colors walk. I'm gonna see what plants I can.
Yes, get some inspiration. Sumac we talked about yesterday, I think, right? Yeah. Oh, I love sumac. It's so beautiful. Just don't put it where you don't want it to spread.
Uh-huh. Oof. Well, that's great. Well, thanks. Any other questions? Well, you might be hearing from some of us, so get
Yeah.
ready. Yeah.
No, and like I said, I'll share with Chrissy the little like pre-made planting plan for you with the plant list. And I can share a copy of the resources where to find like native plant nurseries and such. So you can share that on your website if you'd like, or link to our website. Just like spread the word.
You will.
Yeah.
You will.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
And nice to meet you. It's nice to know there's going to be another person we can connect with. So
Yes. Yeah. Emily's
Oh, yeah.
great. She's already like, we did a workshop a couple weeks ago and she's like in it. It's happening. It's great.
great. Fantastic. Well, thanks, Emily, for coming today. We appreciate that.
Oh, of course. Anytime.
Hey. All right. Well, I guess we're going to sign off and go catch the last rays of sunshine today. So thanks everybody for coming, and thanks again, Kelsey and Emily, for being with us today, and all of you who attended. We appreciate it. Take care.
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.